I had a guy tell me on that first trip in Sudan who turned to me at one point. He said, if bad guys come to this camp, the first person they're going to go after is you because you got the camera. And the most dangerous weapon in this camp, in this IDP camp, is not my gun, it's your camera.
Hi, welcome back to Conversations. My name is Emma,
And I'm Jenny.
and today we're interviewing David Johnson with Silent Images.
David was an English teacher who now travels the world with his camera, helping nonprofits tell their stories.
Wow, what a dream job.
But there's more to his story than meets the eye.
Let's meet David.
David, welcome to the podcast. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Emma, thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
So, your organization is called Silent Images. I find that title very intriguing. How does your work reflect that title?
Well, the name was kind of birthed underneath the shade of a acacia tree in Sudan. That was my first assignment before I knew silent images. I just felt the call to kind of use my camera to serve others and found myself in the middle of all things, a genocide in the middle of Sudan, documenting some pretty, as you can imagine, pretty horrific things. And um, the one that's beginning to lay in my heart, Proverbs 31:8, to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves, for the rights of all the destitute. And just the idea, the thought that, an image is supposed to be worth, 1,000 words, right? But sometimes these words get drowned out and these stories get drowned out and they become silent. And these silent images need to kind of have another opportunity to have a voice and to have their story told. And so this concept of kind of restoring the voices of these silent stories around the world was kind of how it all came together. And so silent images really was kind of birthed, throughout that initial project. Didn't have a nonprofit, didn't have anything except for really just an idea at that point.
So, tell our listeners what exactly you do.
So since that first project in Sudan for the last 18 years, we've been using our cameras to tell stories for charities, nonprofits, churches, and really help get stories out there that need to be told. And those are often organizations who don't have tons of budget, but have amazing stories. That could be rescuing girls from human trafficking in Cambodia. It could be working with the homeless here in Charlotte. Um, but they have stories that often don't get the headlines. And so what we want to do is try to help them get those stories out there in a professional way. Hopefully, when people watch a silent images short film, they have this like tension of like, wow, there was a lot of surprising hope in the midst of this really tragic moment. And that's really what we know. We're going into documenting some really hard stories, but at least for those of us that try to find God in the midst of even the tragedy, we can always find and hear from people who are going through struggle, something really beautiful and something resilient and something to be celebrated. And so that's what we hope that people will see when even if they're sitting down to watch this charity that's doing something, with anti-human trafficking. You're like, oh, it's going to be really hard, but yet, oh, there's something really beautiful and heroic about this story. So that's what we do.
Well, I love everything about this, and I have so many questions. But I am still learning about you. So how did you go from having I don't know, did you take pictures? Did you do videography beforehand and go from, oh, I like doing this to doing what you do now, traveling the world and, capturing these beautiful moments?
Yes and no. My first career was a teacher. So I was an English
Oh,
teacher,
wow.
not in college. Yeah. And so I loved writing. I loved story. I loved the power of story. And so I'd go overseas during the summer and just volunteer for nonprofits. I was a tennis coach, still kind of am a tennis coach, but I would take my racket, I would take my camera and, my computer and just say, hey, how can I serve? But I kept hearing from a lot of charities, hey, will you help us with writing, with photography, with communication of some sort? And this is still, early 2000s. So like charities were still doing newsletters, believe it or not, right? But a lot of it was writing, a lot of it was just still photography. But the point was, I saw that there was a gap of communication for nonprofits. They just couldn't afford to do it, nor did they have the expertise. And so I kind of started to just say, huh, this is interesting. I love telling stories. I love writing. I love communication. I've always loved photography. I wasn't formally trained. I was an education major, but really, I just kind of wanted to use my skills in some way. And the call, I wish I could say I jumped as soon as I felt the call. But I love teaching so much. It was like, I don't know if I want to leave the classroom. But it was about a 3 year arm wrestle with the Lord where, I tell people the boat kind of gets further and further from the dock and you're straddling two worlds,
Mhm.
right? I had one foot in teaching and one foot in this idea to use my camera and storytell for charities. And eventually it starts to get uncomfortable. You gotta decide. Then the scarier place to be is to stay where you're at just because it was safe. And that's kind of what I started to feel with teaching. I was like, I think I'm just staying here because it's comfortable, but I think it's time to jump. And so that's what led me on that first initial project in Sudan of just like, I'm just gonna try this and explore it. And 18 years later, that's what we've been doing. So yeah.
So, how many countries have you actually been to or projects you've worked on?
Oh, countries, I'm 45-ish. Yeah, mid 40s. Projects, hundreds. I don't know the number of projects, but we're producing 60 to 70 short films a year
Wow.
for charities. And these are, short 2, 3 minutes, sometimes longer. We just did something on affordable housing for Charlotte. That was about a 12, 13-minute film, but most of them are typically shorter.
My husband did photography and videography for several years. He did real estate just kind of locally, but every day he was doing shoots, and this sounds like a dream job. So my next question is, do you have a family, and like, do they come with you when you travel? How does that work?
Yeah, so I do have a family, have two beautiful young daughters and a wife. Been married 15 years, and our daughters are 10 and 12. And they are now starting to travel with me. For example, this summer, we're going to go to Guatemala as a family. I've got 5, 6 different video projects I'm going to work on, and they're going to go with me. We've actually done this for the last 4 summers. So we started when the girls were 7-ish. They started going with me periodically, at least in summertime when they could get away from school. And then during the school year, I don't travel as much. And I used to travel all the time before kids. But now I limit that. I will send some of our contractors or our staff out to do a lot of the travel. So I limit mine. It's that tension of, I love going out there now, but I miss my family like crazy. So my solution to that was take them with me when I can
I love
and
that.
and really expose them, right? So
Yes.
I never got that experience growing up, so I would hope to be able to give that to my kids one day as well. I was just talking about that yesterday, actually. I was like, "Well, I wanna go to this place and this place, but I also wanna wait till, like, I have kids and they're this age so that they can experience it." So I love what you're doing there.
I call it forced family friction. It's,
Yeah.
you and our girls are blessed in so many ways at a great school and, but I like to kind of like, you know what, we're gonna throw you in a place where no one speaks English and there's a lot of poverty and you kinda have to work through the reality of the brokenness of the world, but also the beauty and teach them to see the beauty in the midst of the brokenness.
I'm thinking, David, some of our listeners might be on that edge that you were talking about or straddling, and I think one of the dominant emotions is fear, right? There's a security, and even, like, taking your kids somewhere, there's a lot of fear. "What if this happens? What if that happens? Or what if I quit the job and do the nonprofit and you had to raise money?" You know?
Right,
Like,
right.
it's your spiritual journey, how have you dealt with that fear? Did you feel that?
No, of course. I mean, fear's real. It's always there. Um, I haven't overcome it, and I married a beautiful wife who probably has more fear than I do in the sense of like, kind of mom mode of like all these things that could go wrong. And so I'm always conscious of hers fear now is kind of stacked on with mine, which is, healthy. I need to be aware of that. But I think, as I said, I think the scarier place to be, as I said before, is just to stay where you're at just because it's safe. Because I think what happens there is you see these 40, 50-year-old people grow up and hit midlife and have these midlife crises because they just never tried those things that they knew the Lord was calling them to, but they kind of lived this life of comfort and then have tons of regret and just kind of wondering the what ifs. And I don't want to be reckless. My wife and I literally were having this conversation last night because there's all kinds of volcano activity right now in Guatemala. And so telling my wife, okay, I'm starting to communicate with people down there to see, is it still safe and should we go and should we make adjustments, whatever. I mean, yeah, see, I mean, you're wise, but you also just have to learn at times, just say, okay, God, I'm gonna listen to you. And if I feel peace about it, I'm gonna keep moving forward. Uh, but it's not like it's like, oh yes, here is the silver bullet secret answer I found to overcome fear. Fear is okay. It's always there. But I think probably the larger fear that I have is fear of failure, of just choosing to say no to a bunch of stuff and then living a life of regret. So
I think this topic's really important, especially because we can all relate to that. Do we stay in our safe zone or do we, put ourselves out there? I've recently experienced this past year completely changing everything in my life because it got to a point where it wasn't good after being so good. And I was like, I was so comfortable with like a routine. And I was like, changing a routine was the scariest thing for me. And then I did it and it ended up being so much better. Same with my husband. He changed his entire work situation. And for a while, it got really bad and then, it's going up from there. I've seen with Jenny as her friend, she's like, okay, I have all these projects I want to do. I'm just going to do them. And she chose her most, important ones and she did it and she's doing it. And just within a small amount of time, we can see that it is worth it. Now, I'm not saying it's always going to be positive. There's sometimes you do stuff and you're like, wait, that wasn't good. Let me, try again. But I think that's, really cool that you were able to take an idea and make it such a big thing. So, what are you guys working on now? And do you have any like current goals? Like, are you trying to get even bigger? Are you guys comfortable in the company?
yeah, I mean, that's a real conversation at 18 years old of a ministry. Like how big do you want it? What is big mean? Is it better? Right?
Necessarily.
But that is the American way, right? More has got to be better. But what's better? And I think this thing is quality. And quality is primary for us. We have been, and maybe it's just my personality. I like being boutique-ish and being more artisan-like, where we can be conscious of which projects we take and just do them well instead of, okay, how do we just scale these and do more? And so I think that's the tension we always feel because people are always, thinking, oh, if this is good, then more must be better. But um, I would say right now we are really trying to focus on let's do it always better and let's look for new places and new projects. As for projects right now, we've got a lot of local projects, and then our creative director is going to Tanzania for a couple of weeks, and then I'll obviously be in Guatemala for July for several projects. We did just do this story around affordable housing in Charlotte, and we're kind of pushing that out there and trying to get that into churches and schools and be educated around the topic. We've just done a whole series on mental health. We did 7 films around mental health, and that wasn't for a particular charity. It's just what we call our passion projects. And so we did 7 films: bipolar, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, etc. So PTSD, suicide, and those were really well received. We put those in schools and churches and just kind of gave that out as a free gift for people to start the conversation. It's all story driven because we really believe that stories are disarming. They bridge that disconnect. I mean, in such a divided world, that stories do have a way of kind of unifying us and hopefully creating some empathy. You hear words, even like mental health, at least several years ago, the only time we hear that is if there's a school shooting, right? School shooting, okay, mental health, was this person mentally stable? Or if there's some sort of celebrity who committed suicide, but there really wasn't some like healthy conversation around it, especially around just empathy and connecting with people and understanding that at a deeper level. So anyways, things like that. Affordable housing has a political stigma to it. Immediately people kind of get, oh, affordable housing. Okay, well, are they, what angle are they going at politically? And it's like, wait a second, these are human beings who are looking for housing, and they have stories, and sometimes we let the headlines kind of tell us a 15-second narrative that is not the complete story. So, anyways, that project is out there now, and you can find all those on our social media and website.
That's really amazing, the span that you have. The first time I saw your work was after the hurricane in North Carolina.
Mm.
you all did, a beautiful video about some of the relief efforts and interviewing the people that were, in the middle of it. And looking at your still photography, your images, David, and your clients have commented on this, are not just, "Here's what's going on," but the heart, like capturing the heart. I saw a little boy in Kenya just, peeking out of this government project where he was with his biggest toothy grin. So, is that something you've learned or is it a gift? How do you capture that?
Yeah, I guess it's both learned, but also the gift is not like a talent. I think the gift is just um asking the Lord to show me how to be observant and just be an observer of people. Just watch people and learn from them and pay attention to the details. Those are things that honestly I don't think our culture then we've lost a lot of that because it takes time and it takes patience. And so I don't know if it's a gift or if it's just something you've kind of learned along the way when you go into a scenario to kind of just pause and just observe people for who they are and look for things that are unique that make them unique and beautiful. Um, so I guess you could learn some of that in a classroom, but some of that is just you just learn it by going out there. And I think the amount of international experience and exposure to different cultures of just throwing yourself into being the minority in a situation, you get better at just kind of just watching and learning instead of just like, oh, this is what I think is the most important thing happening here. And you're like, I actually don't know anything about this culture right now. I just need to watch and listen and then decide, okay, what actually makes this moment really beautiful. Um, the technicalities all come later on as to how you frame it, etc.
Well, regardless, talent's definitely there. You can't deny that. But overall, I think the company it stands out to me because of so many things that you said. For instance, you're not just trying to get all of these clientels and make money and say, "Oh, we did all of this." You're not trying to be so big. You're trying to, just like you said, listen, be still, and really try to be a part of the moment. You're not just taking pictures. You are being a part of someone's experience, and you get the privilege to share that. And I think you can really see that through just the little bit of what I've seen on your website. And we will link your website for everyone to be able to see. I will watch all 7 videos. I think that's a great thing that you guys did, that you took that time because even if someone doesn't have a specific diagnosis, again, we're all human and can relate. And that's what we're all about on this podcast. And I hope that our listeners will also take the time to look at the website and, see what it's all about. So I just wanted to acknowledge how cool it is that you really are, boutique and that's important to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there in your travels, you probably get this question all the time. Is there a moment that stands out to you or an image that, when you get discouraged or need inspiration that just comes back to you? Is there anything like that?
Well, if you're in my studio, there are photos all around me right now, and they're all reminders. And as photographers, I could tell you exactly where I was, even though we've taken thousands of photos over 18 years. I could tell you the moment where I was, stage of life where I was. A lot of the feelings come back. Um, I'm sitting here looking at a beautiful uh, woman in yellow from Sudan from the first project that just the beauty and the strength and the courage and resilience of the women in Sudan just overwhelmed me. But at first I didn't understand what was happening. I had to learn tons about the genocide. I had sadly had to learn tons about the amount of rape that was happening and why these women often looked ostracized from different communities. They kind of stand by themselves and the story of what has happened with the genocide there. But then I look at this woman in yellow and I'm just, which actually I've written a couple of books, and one of them was The Voice of Beauty, which is a photo essay of the beauty and resilience of the women of Africa, particularly Central Africa, Uganda, Sudan, and just kind of celebrating their strength and courage and dignity. And so, anyways, yeah, there's so many photographs that have so many stories, and important moments of forming me as a storyteller, and hopefully, most importantly, reflecting the beauty of God through these struggles, and also moving others to action. I mean, that is why we take the photograph. We don't take the photograph to exploit someone. I mean, I take these photographs so that someone else will look at it and be like, I'm inspired too by that beauty. And I'm now looking at a woman from Sudan a little bit differently. And actually that reminds me of a ministry I should be supporting. That's providing, mosquito nets to women in Sudan to help fight malaria, whatever. Um, or I want to, go to Compassion and, and adopt a child, with Compassion International now, and I'm going to look for one in Sudan or whatever. That's our hope that these photographs will move people to action too.
I love how you just casually say, "Oh, I wrote a couple books." Like, it's no big deal. I mean, that takes
It's
a
actually
I
where,
mean
yeah, that's where Solomon just started. I mean, I didn't even mention that, but that was,
Yeah?
it
Wow.
was, there were Voices of Sudan and Voice of Beauty were the two books that initially kind of launched us. And thought I was going to keep writing books, but um, those take so much time, and I kind of
That's what
got
I'm
more.
saying, they do take so much
House.
time, and you just casually said it, I was like, "Wait." That's like, props to you, like, wow. That's definitely something that will, if you don't mind, link so people can take a look at that. I'm gonna ask just kind of one more question, if that's okay, and it's kind of like a deeper, broad question, so answer it however you wish. Reflecting, can you see yourself kind of from the start of your journey to just where you are now, how God has kind of like changed you as a man, as a person, what you've learned through your experience that most nobody gets to experience everything you've already experienced, which is so cool. But can you share with us, like, kind of what you've been able to see kind of transform in your life from this?
Um, Well, there's so many things that I've learned because, yeah, it's just how the Lord works. And but I'm going to use that stained glass window right behind you, Jenny, if that's okay. There's a
Mhm.
beautiful stained glass behind you. Yeah, I mean that stained glass is beauty is made by something that's broken, right? So broken glass um, is kind of put together, and there's light that shines through it, and all of a sudden something really beautiful comes of that. And my prayer is that I have grown as a creative storyteller, as a nonprofit leader, as somebody whose day job is to try to go empathize with other people's stories, as kind of going, you know what? There is always something beautiful, and there's always the Lord's light and something that is shining through even the darkest, most broken piece of glass. And a beautiful story. And that is why stained glass windows were started, right? To share the gospel. In the medieval times, no one could read. And so broken pieces of glass put together tell a story for those who are illiterate to kind of go, oh yeah, that's the gospel. That's something beautiful for people. And I feel like my calling should hopefully is clear of a culture that's not necessarily illiterate, but it's probably too busy and too reliant on the headlines to define countries, people groups,
Mm.
whatever. Those people, we allow those headlines to define it. And so hopefully our work, and hopefully your question for me is like, someone who hopefully is growing in my ability to see that beauty in the broken pieces of glass and to want to celebrate that. Hopefully, I've gotten better at it. Because I think I look back, and I mean, even to that first trip in Sudan, like I just knew the Lord had put a camera in my hands. I did not really know the breadth and depth and weight of responsibility at that moment. I had a guy tell me on that first trip in Sudan who, we had guards there with big guns, and they were there to protect us. He turned to me at one point. He said, if bad guys come to this camp, the first person they're going to go after is you. I was like, oh, great. Why? Because you got the camera. And the most dangerous weapon in this camp, in this IDP camp, is not my gun. It's your camera. And
Really? Wow.
and because the reality is, bullets can only shoot so far, but an image is boundless, right? Which is why dictators and those who are oppressing and those who are, taking girls into um, sexual exploitation or whatever in Cambodia. Like they don't want photographers. They don't want anybody who's going to document it because that does have power and that has weight. I don't think I knew, and he helped me at least initially understand, wait a second, this is a heavy responsibility. So I hope I've done it well. And I hope I've continued to get better at seeing those broken pieces of glass and giving the world a mosaic of stained glass that tells a beautiful story in the midst of brokenness.
That's beautiful. I just had one practical question for our listeners. You know, we're a photographic world, right? Videos, images. Everyone's got their cell phone taking photos. And I was going to say, do you have any suggestions for actually creating a photo or something that has that power emotions? But what I hear you saying, it's really not about the technique. It's about just stopping and seeing people connect. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, you can you could do two YouTube videos and learn the buttons on a camera, but that is not who I end up hiring to go work for us. I can find a talented photographer, but it's very hard to find someone who has the heart of a missionary, but the talent and gifting of a creative storyteller and artist. But the artistry of it, um, that's easy to teach. But the heart and the patience and the empathy and the just the connectivity to people, that's much harder. And I believe that, in my opinion, that's what the Lord gave you is just that unique empathy, um, to just care and love people more than you love that image. There's a lot of times where I put my camera down and just I'm not taking a photograph right now. There's just certain times when the spirit just goes, you know what? Just be present and always be willing to put your camera down because whoever you're documenting is always more important than the image.
That's a great perspective.
Well, we definitely appreciate everything that you're doing, and I know the charities you work with and the people you work with, appreciate it as well, so definitely keep it up.
And what do you suggest for people who's like, I got to see these pictures, or organization that wants to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If there's nonprofits and charities out there who need help with photography or video, reach out to us. Silentimages.org. That's where they can find everything. Our social media is all out there. So,
Okay, well, thank you, David,
Thank
and
you.
enjoy your trip to Guatemala and with your
yeah,
kids.
thanks so much. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.
Tell others about the podcast.
And for more information on today's guest, check out our show notes.
Until next time.